What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Gear Verdict. Today we're doing an optic review looking at this Vortex Razor HD 13 to 39 or the Mini Razor. We're going to look at this today. I know that we have been talking about the rifle review that is coming, so be on the lookout for that when it drops. But today we're looking at the Mini Razor. Can I get going into, is this worth the hype as well? There's a lot of hype coming into this. I know it's been out for a while, but I feel like there haven't been a lot of long-term reviews on this particular optic, and that's what we're going to provide today. Kind of diving into some of the specs, obviously, like we usually do right off the bat, but then going into the experiences that we've had with this particular piece of gear, looking at this spotting scope. Is it worth it? Does it replace all of your optics? Or does it not work? Is it not what marketing says it was? Does it have a very specific place in your kit, or should you just save your money and go with something else? So that's what we're going to go into today. So let's take a look at the Vortex Mini Razor. All right, so looking at the Mini Razor, obviously there's a lot of really good things going on spec-wise for some of you who might be more, weight conscious, maybe some of those backcountry hunters, or people that just don't want to carry a lot of weight when they're walking around every day out in the woods. Maybe if you're on doing day hunts or whatever it might be, and you just don't like a lot of weight. This ticks a lot of boxes in terms of that weight category. It's under 2 pounds. It's 28.6 ounces. So it's very lightweight, and that was something that really drew me to this as well, is how light it was and how compact it is. It's about 10.4 inches overall from the objective lens here all the way to the eyepiece, excluding this on digiscoping adapter we have here. So it's 10.4 inches overall length. Very, very small footprint. I put this in my EXO K4 in the side pockets, and it fit extremely well with a lot of other stuff. So that was another point, specification as we're looking at. It doesn't take up a lot of room, and I thought that was huge, especially on some of those backcountry hunts. The other thing is magnification is 13 to 39. Has a 56 millimeter objective lens. You have about, it says on the specs, you have about 168 to 189 feet on a field of view at 1,000 yards. So not a lot of big field of view, but we also don't have a very large objective here on the end. So those are kind of some of the specs that you have here. The eye relief is not super forgiving as well, so just kind of keep that in mind there. But let's go into some of the tech features as well, such as like lens coatings, the body of itself, what it's made out of. So you'd have a rubberized Armor Tech. I think it's called Armor Tech body that they use here. So that rubber coating is, or armor, I should say, is very durable. This has been in my pack all year round. I did have the neoprene cover on this, I'll admit, just because I like to keep my stuff nice. But it's held up very well. You can't even tell that there was any wear on this through that neoprene cover. So mine looks honestly brand new. So that's, two things: Rubber Tech or Armor Tech rubber coating on the outside. It does come with an Arca plate on the bottom already, built into the optics. That's nice. You don't have to have any kind of additional Arca plate that you have to purchase out separately to put that on in order to put it on your tripod. It's already built in. It's super fast and really easy to get on and off your tripod. So as far as like their lens, their glass, it does say that they come with their HD optical system. It does not say what kind of glass that is. It doesn't say what it's made out of, like some of the others, like the Kawas use fluorite glass, the Swarovski. They are much more in-depth about what their glass is. Vortex doesn't really say anything about that. So just kind of keep that in mind. As far as their lens coatings, they have their XR, just looking over here, their Plus lens coating. It's supposed to help with low light performance. We'll get into that in a moment, but that is the lens coating that they use. They do have their lens coating for dielectric prisms coating and face correction, as well as their APO system for color correction. So what does that mean? Not a lot. They don't really go into any of the specifics on their website about what that means for this particular optic. That's all that they go into. There's no additional information outside of that. So those are some of the coatings that they have. Let's kind of look at that from an experience lens and how I notice those coatings out in the field at all sorts, all hours of the day, from dawn till dusk, early light, low light. Let's kind of look at it that way. So low light performance. Did I think the low light performance of this was good? I would say it's good, not great. It's not amazing. It's not going to blow you away on the low light performance of this particular optic. I think a part of that is the objective lens here of this 56 millimeter. I think that's part of it. But the also, I think, is the glass and the lens coatings. It does a pretty good job low light. I do have some film footage that we'll look at here for some of the low light performance that I had, and you'll be able to see what that looks like. I also have a video that we'll put up here that has, it's in the middle of the day, full blown, light on a mountain goat, and everything looks blown out. So we're gonna look at that too. So I'll insert those here so you can take a look at those, and we'll kind of go over some of the differences in each one of those videos. I'll do a voiceover and we'll talk about that.
Right, so starting off with the first clip, this is looking at a group of mountain goats that are about 1,000 yards away. So let's go ahead and get this rolling. Looking at these mountain goats at 1,000 yards, you'll notice in the clip, nothing is super crisp in my opinion. Pretty blurry, it was focused. I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit. But that's just kind of an overall theme that I noticed. And as I zoom out, you'll notice that I'll look at the edges of the scope right there. Pretty blurry, not really crisp. Something that I noticed, and I don't feel like this low light gathering in this clip is great. I feel like it should have been brighter. This was taken about 8 o'clock at night in the middle of the summer here in Utah. There's still plenty of light left. It wasn't really bright. Animals are kind of blurred. Not seeing a lot of great crispness in my opinion this late at night. So that's why I feel like, as I mentioned in the video, the low light performance of the Mini Razor is not fantastic. It's okay. But if you're looking at these goats from 1,000 yards like I was, really trying to determine, hey, is there a billion there? I feel like it'd be really hard. All right, now looking at this second clip, this is much later in the evening. It's almost 9 o'clock at this point here in Utah in the middle of the summer. This is just a goat that we found. He's hanging out in some pines on these really ragged cliffs. I think this is a really good representation of what the low light will look like. It's starting to get darker here in this clip. I mean, you can still see that it's a goat. You can barely see his horns, but it's not like fantastic in my opinion. All right, so in this quick clip, it's 5 o'clock in the evening. Looking at this goat, I feel like it's pretty blown out. There's a lot of sunlight coming in. He's not very crisp. This is only about 400 yards away. As I replay this, you'll just notice, I feel like he's really blown out. The goat is, again, not a lot of crispness on the leaves, maybe some mirage, some heat there, but it's not super crisp in my opinion. I think it's a good optic for some of these situations, but it's not super crisp as we look at this goat here in this particular video. So take it for what it's worth and kind of judge based on what we're seeing here. Okay, here we have a bighorn ewe. She's about 600-700 yards away. You can see one coming up from the bottom there as well. A little bit better in the day. Again, this is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 600-700 yards. Again, not super great crispness, detail. You can see a lot of the mirage, but I feel like the image isn't super, crisp. I don't like a Swarovski or a Kawa or some of those other Alpha Glass models. All right, so in this clip, we have 2 mountain goats 380 yards away on a cliff band. You can see, I feel like you have pretty good clarity here in this particular video. As I mentioned, 380 yards away. This is about 5:30 in the afternoon. This is where this optic really shines, I feel like, is really looking, that sub 800 yards, really the point of determining what that animal really is. That's where I feel like this lightweight spotter can be really helpful. If you are just trying to get in close, then look at the animal, sub 8, maybe even sub 500. This is where I feel like this optic shines. Could be very beneficial in some particular instances. Spot and stalk mule deer in some of the the low country South Dakota type environments, the coulees of Montana, Alberta, that kind of stuff. That's where I feel like this optic really shines. Not super far away glassing, but as you get in close, really trying to determine, hey, is that the animal I want to go after? This is where I feel like this optic it can actually be pretty beneficial and probably how I'll use it. But looking at this clip here, I feel like it's pretty good clarity on the mountain goats. And again, 5:30 in the afternoon, 380. All right, let's go for one more video to compare and contrast here. This is a pair of bucks that are about 650 yards away. This is at 6:42 in the evening, just coming out. This, again, is where this optic, I feel like, shines that sub 800, maybe even sub 600, as I mentioned in some of the other clips. Here you can really see what these bucks are. We have a, pretty decent buck on the right. And on the left, we have a smaller one. But here you can really determine, hey, what are those 4x4s? Are they 3x3s? Or, what are they? This is where this optic shines, is getting in closer, studying those animals. Is that really what I want to go after? So that's just my opinion. I don't think there's amazing clarity with this particular optic. It's good. It's not great. Edge to edge is my biggest issue with this particular spotting scope. But again, I still feel like it's like a really good optic to get in close and look at these animals.
Okay, so looking at those videos, you'll notice in some of those videos that I talked about, the one with the mountain goat in the grass, everything looks really blown out in my opinion. I didn't think it was super defined. And that was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's plenty of light, and obviously it blew everything out. So they're just something to notice. Some of those low light shots that we had in the camera, like the one at the mountain goat, just that single billy feeding in some of that brush, not a lot of light captured, obviously, right? There's some limitations there that I feel like some of the alpha glass would pick up, and you'd be able to see a lot more clear. So that's just my opinion on those. I don't think the low light performance is fantastic on these. In fact, I have another friend who has one of these, and he has the SIG stabilized binoculars, and he felt that the SIGs actually outperformed this mini spotter in some of the low light situations. So just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about that. If that's really, really important to you, keep that in mind. It's something that you might really want to consider, that this might not be for you. All right, so some of the pros of this particular optic. Obviously, weight under 2 pounds. That is phenomenal. That's awesome, and that's probably the main reason why I bought this to run my entire season. You're under 2 pounds. It's going to be really lightweight. You're barely going to notice this, and it's going to be great for you backcountry hunters, maybe somebody who is super weight conscious. You're counting ounces. This is something that maybe you want to look at from a weight perspective. It does a really good job in the weight category. The other thing that I like as a pro as well is you have the built-in Arca plate here on the bottom, so you don't have to buy any additional plates. It's easy to just put in, into your tripod, take it out. Super easy. I love that feature that I don't have to have any additional adapters on my optic. That's huge. So the other thing I wanted to look at here, and this kind of ties into my experience as well. This is a great optic sub 800 yards, in my opinion. That's a huge pro for this. Sub 800 yards, it's going to be, that's kind of the sweet spot, in my opinion. And I do think that's a pro, because how I would use this optic is that sub 800 yard, range. Potentially when you've maybe glassed up an animal from far away, you really want to close that distance on, 800 and under. And again, that's just my opinion. This is a great optic to pull out really quickly, verify what you're looking at. Is that the buck that you want to go after, or is that, the bull that you've been looking at, and how big is it? Verify yes or no. That's where this shines as a verification optic, in my opinion. I do not think this is great past, 900,000 yards. I have footage that we'll also put in here of the animals at those distances, and you can decipher for yourself, but I don't really think this shines in those areas. For two reasons. First, I don't think you have enough magnification. I found myself wishing that I had a lot more magnification while I was utilizing this on my deer hunts and as well as my mountain goat hunt this year. I just kept on finding myself wishing I had more magnification. And the second thing was a bigger objective lens. I wish I had potentially had a 65 or an 85 on those hunts. Yes, I understand that's more weight, but when I was up on the mountain and hunting and looking through this, I found myself thinking, I think I would be okay with the extra weight to have a little bit more magnification and a bigger objective for low light, and maybe better edge-to-edge clarity potentially. But then again, that's going to be with lens coatings and glass. So maybe with a different optic, you would get that. But really what I mean to say with that is, with the 65 or 85, you'd have better light gathering. And so I found myself wishing for those two things: better magnification and a bigger objective. So that said, that it is a pro in terms of sub 800. Yes, I think this shines in that particular range. As you really get in and you really want to look at an animal and determine, is that the one that you do want to put your tag on? Do you really want to get in close and kill that thing? This is where I think this shines. That's what I would use it for, just kind of getting in close, really verifying if that's the animal you want to go for. That's what I would use this optic for. I don't know if I would do long, glassing sessions, really trying to pick brush apart with this particular optic. I think I would go towards more like a 65 millimeter objective lens with higher magnification to really do that kind of glassing. I think this is a really good optic to verify, and that's kind of where I feel like this fits in your kit. If you want this to get in close and verify animals, that's where I think this truly, truly shines. So I do think a pro for this is 700 verification for those situations. That's where this optic, I do think as a pro, can be very valuable for your kit. The other thing I do feel like is this, price-wise, for the clarity that you get, I do think is a really, really good value. This is, $1,000 for this particular optic. Compared to some of the alpha glass, like the Kowa TSN, let me look over here, 553. Alpha glass, fluorite glass, but that's going to run you $2,500. That's $1,500 more than the Vortex Razor HD, the mini razor. Or if you go with the Swaro ATC, that's $3,000. That's going to be basically 3 times the price of this. So you have to think about that. With the price that you're paying, is it really giving you the value that it's worth in some of those situations with the Kawa or the Swarovski versus this? This is $1,000. I do think, in my opinion, if for $1,000, I do think this actually does really, really well for that price point versus some of the others that you might have to pay 2 or 3 times the amount of money to get those, to get a little bit more clarity, maybe to have better edge clarity and light at the end of the day. But I do feel like for the value, which is a pro, this provides you with a lot of value for the $1,000, in my opinion. So I do think it is good for that price range. So that's something you might want to look at is, for that value of $1,000, does this give you everything that you want? If not, you're gonna have to go up quite a bit in price in order to get more clarity, a little bit more zoom on like the Swarovski goes up to 45 power. So it's just something to look at there if that's something that you really want to do. All right, so let's go and look at some of the cons, some of the things that I wished were different about this optic. And the first one, again, is going to be that edge clarity. It does get fuzzy around the edges, which makes it hard for catching movement on some of the edges of that glass. So that's something that I noticed. Some of the light gathering capabilities of this particular optic I didn't love, so that's another thing. And then another one is the magnification. When you really zoom in all the way up to 39, I feel like the visual clarity and the light gets darker in this optic. I think that's a limitation of your lens size, but potentially also your glass and your lens coating. So I feel like you lose some of the light in that optic with as you go up to full power here on 39X. I do feel like you lose some of that clarity there. And I didn't love that when I did that. And again, that might just be limitations more of just the objective lens, which I totally get with your your objective and the exit pupil and all of that. I understand that might be a limitation, but I do think maybe better glass, maybe better coatings would help as well. So just something to consider. If low light performance is something that means a lot to you, maybe don't look at the Vortex. Maybe go with some of the others, save a little bit more money, go with the Kawa or the Swaro. This, I feel like, does not do fantastic in low light situations. That is my personal opinion, and some of the opinions of others that have this optic as well that I know. It's good, it's not great. And it says something when you have the SIG stabilized binoculars that most of us felt had better low light performance than this. So just keep that in mind. That is something I wish were different. So there's the cons list. So you can take those for what they're worth. You might hate my opinions, you might like them. That's up to you. You can decide those for yourself. If you're deciding to pick one of these up, take those into consideration. So what's the verdict on the mini razor? I'm going to be honest. I think it really depends on your hunting style, how you hunt, where you hunt, and if you value low light situations, being able to really stay out longer, glass longer, and still be able to have good clarity and light gathering, I would suggest that maybe looking at a different optic if that's for you. If you're the weight conscious hunter who doesn't mind maybe a little less low light performance, yes, I do think this is a good option for you. To be your main spotter, though, I don't think this replaces a bigger spotting scope. I just don't think it does that. As I mentioned on my mountain goat hunt and some of the other hunts I had for antelope as well, I found myself wishing again that I had a higher zoom range and a bigger objective lens on a lot of those hunts. I felt like the benefit that those gave me were worth the weight that I would gain in packing that optic around. So that was something that I kept wishing. So the verdict for me, at least, is I don't think I'm going to run this very much going into 2026. It might go on hunts with me where I'm, maybe spot and stock antelope that I'm going to be doing, where maybe I get, sub 500. I pick this up. Maybe I'm really trying to find where they're at or really determine if that antelope is the one I go after. Maybe that's when I'll pull this out. But I think for the majority of cases, I'm probably just going to use a bigger optic, a bigger spotting scope to give me better light gathering and more zoom. That's just the two biggest things that I found that I really wish I had on all of the hunts that I took this on this past season. It does have a great, footprint. It's super small. It's lightweight. It does have really good glass for the price point. I will say that. I do think it shines in that area. It's not going to cost you $3,000 like a Swaro or $2,500 like a Kawa. But so that's the verdict. For you, it depends. If you are, again, that weight conscious guy, maybe take a look at this. If you really value, edge-to-edge clarity and low light performance, maybe this is not the optic for you. And keep in mind, in my opinion, this does not replace bigger spotting scopes. This is not an end-all be-all, type of spotting scope. I think it has its place, and I think you need to really think about that when you're wanting to buy this. How do you hunt? What is your hunting style? Where do you hunt? That might all play factors into, is this an optic that you want to go with? If you're hunting the sage country, open sage, flatland, open country like that, where you're really glassing a long way, I don't think I would recommend this. You want a bigger optic for that. So that's just kind of some, my opinions, my verdict here, and what I like and what I don't like about the Vortex Mini Razor. Again, it's a great optic. I just don't think it's the best in this class. That's probably going to go to the Swaro or the Kawa, depending on where you lean with those two, since I do think those two are really, really close. But for this review, the Vortex Razor, the Mini Razor, it's good. It's not amazing, but I do think it can get the job done in a lot of situations, a lot of scenarios for all of you out there. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about purchasing this. Those three things: how do you hunt, where do you hunt, and what is most important to you in terms of glass. Then that will, I think, will really help you determine if this is an optic that you want to buy. Again, maybe go back into the video and look at some of the different videos I have of me glassing, mountain goats, deer, so on and so forth, and see if those videos make it look good enough. With that said, that's the final verdict on the Vortex Mini Razor. Coming up soon is our rifle review on that rifle build. No, I didn't forget about it. It's coming, but I want to put a lot into that video and make it really, really good. So just be on the lookout for that. That is coming soon. And with that being said, like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.